A veteran searching for Major General Charles Calvin Rogers on the Department of Defense website found only an error message, "Page not found." Rogers was the highest-ranking black soldier to receive the Medal of Honor, wounded 3 times defending his base in Vietnam, but his page had vanished. The web address had been altered. Trump labeled a Medal of Honor recipient as merely a piece of diversity, equity, and inclusion content. Within days, Jackie Robinson's military service disappeared. The Tuskegee Airmen were removed from Air Force training. Deletion: when you erase the stories of those who fought discrimination to serve their country, are you eliminating discrimination or completing it? In late January 2025, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth ordered all military branches to remove DEI content from Pentagon platforms. Instructions obtained by Texas Public Radio revealed the scope. Content recognizing the first of a specific group to achieve something was flagged first black pilots, first female Marines, first Hispanic Medal of Honor recipients. Keywords triggered automated removals: discrimination, racial equity, equal opportunity. Even commemorative months were targeted. One Defense Department official described the chaos. "Some are going too far, some not far enough. If I don't go far enough, will there be retaliation?" With vague guidance and strict deadlines, an impossible question emerged. Where does historical fact end and DEI content begin? The Air Force was first to face scrutiny. In late January, they removed training videos about the Tuskegee Airmen and women Air Force service pilots from basic military training. The Tuskegee Airmen were the first black military pilots, formed in 1941 when the military believed black Americans couldn't fly aircraft. The 332nd Fighter Group destroyed or damaged more than 400 enemy aircraft. 66 pilots died in combat. But their significance went beyond the missions. Every flight tested whether black Americans would ever be allowed to serve as military pilots. When the removal leaked online, Tuskegee Airmen Incorporated responded, "These stories are essential American history. They do not promote one category of service member over another." The Air Force reversed course within days, but Defense Secretary Hegseth called it malicious compliance, suggesting personnel deliberately removed content to make the policy look bad. Others saw it differently. When orders say remove content recognizing firsts by specific groups, and the Tuskegee Airmen were literally the first black pilots, what else would you remove? Colonel James Harvey III was 101 years old when he learned about the removals. Harvey flew 126 Korean War missions as the first black jet fighter pilot in Korean airspace. In 1949, he won the first Air Force gunnery meet. For decades, the Air Force listed the winners as unknown. It took until 1993 to acknowledge their victory. Harvey remembered what they faced. They said, "We didn't have any ability to operate aircraft. We were inferior, so we showed them." About the 2025 removals, Harvey was direct. "I thought there was progress, but evidently there isn't. I'll tell him to his face. I'll tell him, you're a racist. What can they do to me? Just kill me. That's all." Harvey died later in 2025, one of the last surviving Tuskegee Airmen. While the Air Force scrambled, the broader purge continued. On March 15th, the Department of Defense page honoring Major General Charles Calvin Rogers disappeared. Rogers was born in 1929 in West Virginia, son of a coal miner. He attended segregated schools and earned a mathematics degree from a historically black university commissioned in 1951. He joined an army that was still segregated. On November 1st, 1968, as a lieutenant colonel commanding an artillery base near the Cambodian border, North Vietnamese forces launched a massive assault. Rogers was wounded by an exploding round. He got up and led a counterattack. He was wounded again. More attacks followed. He reinforced positions under continuous fire. When a howitzer crew was hit, Rogers joined them despite being seriously wounded. Over 2 days, he continued directing artillery and leading counterattacks. President Nixon awarded him the Medal of Honor in 1970. Rogers retired as a Major General in 1984, the highest-ranking black soldier to receive the Medal of Honor. He died in 1990 and was buried at Arlington. The Pentagon had featured Rogers in their Medal of Honor Monday series in November 2021. The article detailed his courage, but included one sentence that triggered the removal system. Rogers worked for gender and race equality while in the service. On March 15th, that page was deleted. The web address was modified to include DEI before medal. Army veteran Brandon Friedman wrote on social media, "This is blood-boiling." Charles Rogers was awarded the Medal of Honor after being wounded 3 times. The page has been deleted and the URL changed to include DEI medal. The Pentagon restored the page by March 17th, saying it was removed during auto-removal process. They didn't explain why the URL had been altered or what the auto-removal process involved. On March 19th, Jackie Robinson's page disappeared. The Sports Heroes Who Served series had detailed his military service before breaking baseball's color barrier. Drafted in 1942, Robinson was assigned to a segregated cavalry unit at Fort Riley, Kansas. He applied for officer candidate school, but was initially rejected due to his race. Only after heavyweight champion Joe Louis intervened did Robinson gain admission. In July 1944, at Camp Hood, Texas, a bus driver ordered Robinson to move to the back. Robinson refused. Military buses were technically desegregated by regulation, but drivers often ignored the rules in the South. Robinson was arrested and court-martialed for insubordination. At his August 1944 trial, Robinson argued he'd followed Army regulations prohibiting bus segregation. The court acquitted him of all charges, but he was transferred away from the 761st Tank Battalion before it deployed to Europe. Robinson never saw combat. He received an honorable discharge in November 1944. When users tried to access Robinson's page on March 19th, they received an error. The letters DEI had been inserted into the web address. David Robinson, Jackie Robinson's son, issued a statement. "We were surprised to learn that a page featuring Jackie Robinson was taken down. We take great pride in his service as a soldier and sports hero. A recipient of both the Presidential Medal of Freedom and the Congressional Gold Medal, he is an American hero." The page was restored later that day. Pentagon spokesman John Uliot explained, "Everyone at the Defense Department loves Jackie Robinson, the Navajo Code Talkers, the Tuskegee Airmen, the Marines at Iwo Jima. We salute them for their heroic service. We do not view or highlight them through the prism of immutable characteristics. We recognize their patriotism and dedication to the war-fighting mission, like every other American who has worn the uniform." But Robinson's story cannot be told without acknowledging race. His refusal to move, his court-martial, his breaking of baseball's color barrier, these events were fundamentally about challenging racial discrimination. Removing race from Robinson's story doesn't make it universal. It makes it incomprehensible. The Associated Press obtained a Pentagon database listing items flagged for removal. More than 26,000 images, articles, and posts had been marked. Officials estimated the final count could exceed 100,000. The database revealed the automated nature of the purge and its absurd consequences. Photos of service members with the last name Gay were marked for deletion. Images of the Enola Gay aircraft were flagged because the file name included Gay. Photos of an Army Corps dredging project were marked because an engineer had the last name Gay. A photo of biologists was flagged because the caption mentioned recording fish, gender. Pages honoring the Navajo Code. Talkers were removed. Tributes to the 442nd Regimental Combat Team, the Japanese-American unit that became the most decorated while their families were imprisoned, disappeared. A Marine Corps official said they'd identified at least 10,000 items for removal. After review, 3,600 were deleted. The total didn't include more than 1,600 social media sites left dormant, with no one having administrative access. The Marine Corps had just one civilian employee handling the entire online purge. One person scrubbing years of content under a strict deadline. Arlington National Cemetery's website also removed pages highlighting Black, Hispanic, and female veterans. Pentagon officials defended the removals. Even after high-profile restorations, they made clear the campaign would continue. An official explained the impossible position. Remove too little, and you face accusations of slow rolling. Remove too much, and you face backlash. Automated systems searched for keywords, but algorithms cannot distinguish between promoting DEI and documenting history. A story about Tuskegee Airmen proving black pilots could fly contains words like black, discrimination, and first. To an automated system, it looks exactly like DEI content. To a historian, it's documentation of a significant moment. Lawmakers from both parties demanded explanations. Why were Medal of Honor recipients being erased? The responses were consistent. Removals were either mistakes to be corrected or necessary because content highlighted immutable characteristics. This created a paradox. The Tuskegee Airmen are extraordinary, precisely because of barriers they overcame. Removing context doesn't elevate their achievement. It strips away its significance. By late March, thousands of pages remained deleted. Tens of thousands of images stayed flagged, their fate uncertain. A Pentagon official told Texas Public Radio the review had been too hasty. The use of broad search terms flagged content containing words like diversity, first, black, Hispanic, women, or gay. The most troubling aspect wasn't high-profile cases that got restored. It was thousands of other pages that disappeared without anyone noticing. Local-based newspapers featuring Hispanic service members, deleted articles about first female Ranger School graduates, removed. Photos of black Marines from unit histories, possibly gone forever. No comprehensive list of deletions was made public. No systematic review ensured historically significant material wasn't lost. The Pentagon's own historians weren't consulted. Members of Congress demanded answers. How many pages deleted? What criteria were used? Who decided what stayed? Responses were unsatisfying. Removals complied with executive orders. Content was being reviewed. Mistakes would be corrected, but no list of deletions was provided. No clear criteria established. No timeline for restoration offered. The burden was on the public to notice and complain loudly enough. Famous service members whose deletions made headlines would be restored. Others would remain forgotten. The incident revealed a fundamental tension in how America remembers military history. The military wants to be seen judging people on merit alone. But that's ahistorical. For most of American history, the military did judge based on race and gender. Black Americans weren't allowed as officers or pilots. Women weren't allowed in combat. Integration was resisted fiercely. The modern military's diversity required overcoming systematic exclusion. You cannot celebrate that achievement while pretending exclusion never happened. The compromise position, apparently, is acknowledging discrimination when it's safely in the past, but removing any suggestion it required ongoing effort to overcome. The Tuskegee Airmen can be honored for being first black pilots because that's historical, but pages noting officers worked for racial equality in the 1960s, 70s, or 80s get flagged as DEI content. The line between acceptable history and problematic DEI I kept moving, encompassing more of the past with each deletion. For surviving Tuskegee Airmen, the 2025 removals felt familiar. After World War II, as the 332nd Fighter Group was absorbed into integrated units, their achievements were gradually forgotten. For decades, they remained largely unknown. In the 1990s, persistent advocacy finally brought recognition. President Bush awarded them the Congressional Gold Medal in 2007. In 2020, President Trump promoted Charles McGee to Brigadier General. The recognition seemed permanent. Then videos about them were removed from Air Force training. Photos were flagged for deletion, their history labeled as DEI content. For Colonel Harvey and other survivors, the message was clear. Recognition could be revoked, legacy erased, nothing permanent. Harvey's response wasn't just anger, but exhaustion. Exhaustion at having to prove yourself again, at watching achievements be dismissed as political, at seeing history become controversial simply because it acknowledged overcoming discrimination. Harvey died in 2025. One of the last living Tuskegee Airmen. Future Air Force recruits might not learn about him, depending on whether content remains flagged as DEI. Pentagon officials insisted service members should be honored for dedication to the warfighting mission, not immutable characteristics. But what happens when that dedication requires fighting for the right to serve? The Tuskegee Airmen's dedication wasn't just flying missions. It was proving they deserved to fly. Women who graduated infantry training or ranger school weren't just completing courses. They were proving women could, opening opportunities for others. Service members who challenged discrimination weren't distracting from the mission. They strengthened it by ensuring the military could draw on all qualified personnel. Their fights against discrimination were part of their service. Removing documentation of those fights didn't honor them equally. It erased what made their service significant. The automated systems flagging content couldn't make these distinctions. An algorithm couldn't differentiate between first black pilot, historically, and first to implement DEI training as policy. Technology understood only keywords. Medal of Honor recipients were flagged alongside diversity modules, historical photos alongside promotional materials. With one civilian employee per service and strict deadlines, human review was superficial. The default was delete first, restore only after outcry. Digital content is fragile. When a web page is deleted from military servers, it's usually gone. The Internet Archive preserves some, but archived pages lose official status. Years from now, researchers looking for information about Black Medal of Honor recipients might find only archived versions if they're lucky. They might find broken links, error messages, edited pages with discrimination references removed. They might find nothing. The digital erasure creates gaps in the historical record that will be difficult to fill. Unlike physical memorials requiring deliberate destruction, digital content can be erased with a keystroke. A database query. An automated script. The monument doesn't need toppling. The web page just needs unpublishing. In late March, a Pentagon official acknowledged the process was too hasty, and search terms led to massive overflagging. But the directive remained in effect. Content was still being removed. Thousands of flagged items awaited review. The work continued. The Pentagon's 2025 web page removal campaign will likely be remembered, if at all, as a footnote, a brief controversy during political transition, an overreach partially corrected after outcry. But for service members whose stories were deleted, whose photos were flagged, whose achievements were stripped of context, the erasure was complete and possibly permanent. Their families searching for information might find broken links. Their communities seeking to honor local heroes might discover Pentagon pages documenting achievements have vanished. Their stories, already marginalized, might disappear entirely from official military memory. Decades from now, historians will face challenges earlier generations didn't. The digital record will have gaps. Context will be lost. Distinguishing between what was never documented and what was documented then deliberately erased will be nearly impossible. The deletions of 2025 won't be remembered as vividly as the discrimination they documented, but their effect will be similar. Service members who fought twice, once against the enemy, once for recognition, will be forgotten. The barriers they overcame will be erased, making achievements seem less significant. And the military will continue insisting it judges all equally, even as it systematically removes evidence of the times it didn't. When Colonel Harvey learned about Tuskegee Airmen content being removed, he must have felt time collapse. At 101, he'd proven Black Americans could fly combat aircraft. He'd won the Air Force gunnery meet against competition that assumed he'd fail. He'd seen achievements listed as unknown. For nearly 50 years, he'd finally received recognition, had his story told, had his legacy secured. Then he watched it become controversial again. Labeled as DEI, I removed from training. Younger generations denied the chance to learn what they accomplished. His response, that he'd call the president racist to his face, was from a man with nothing left to lose and everything to lose simultaneously. Nothing because he was 101 and had already fought these battles. Everything because his legacy, what might outlive him, was being erased. He died later that year, one of the last voices with authority about what the Tuskegee Airmen faced. one of the last who could testify from experience why their story mattered. And in Pentagon databases, images of him and his fellow pilots remained flagged, their fate uncertain, their stories labeled as content that divided rather than inspired. This was how America honored its heroes in 2025, by deleting their stories and calling it equality. This will forever be Trump's legacy, no matter what happens from here. He's a man caught in so many webs, we cannot allow for this one to be forgotten. He chose to erase his so-called fellow Americans' histories. And for what? So much for being a president for the people.